Esko Kilpi, ladies and gentlemen, has been for a longer time a huge inspiration for VINT. Sander and I are following the work of Esko for many years, especially because of his strong focus on, I would call, the future of work. And looking at the technology, taking the technology, being able to do other stuff that you probably will talk about, like blockchain and algorithms, that kind of thing. You sort of try to envision the future. Now, whatever happens after this talk, if you're interested, please visit Google Esko and download the paper New Perspectives of Work on Work, forward by VINT Surf. Excellent piece and very inspirational. It gives numerous opportunities to look at your work in a different way. Internationally renowned, I would say, leading a group of researchers of a Finnish think tank, and you're an optimist, it says here. So, because you believe in a human-centric future, like a new, you call it a new renaissance, of a technology-empowered future in which the human being flourishes as never again. Esko, please explain to us why.
Thank you so much. I flew in here with an airline that they warned me has a very bad service. But I had a very different experience. Right after the plane had departed and the fasten seatbelt sign has been put off, a mother with her small boy came rushing past me. I was sitting very close to the toilets and I saw the mother going to the toilet on one side of the aisle and the little boy went to the toilet on the other side. After a few moments, the mother came out and she saw that the toilet where the boy was still occupied, and I heard her whisper, "Remember to shake it before you put it back in the pants." Then the mother went back to her seat. Guess who was already there? After a few minutes, an elderly gentleman came out and I heard him mumble, "What a wonderful service here is." Ladies and gentlemen, the question is, to all of us, is that can algorithms actually create a human renaissance? And what might be the ingredients of that renaissance? And that's something I hope to open partly at least. But we have to go back to the very basics. And we should understand and always remember that an economy is always about people. So in an economy, basically, it's people that produce goods and services for people. So it's not organizations, it's not robots, it's people with people. So the starting point is that companies are really only intermediary forms that make this possible, that arrange this and coordinate what's going on. And therefore, I suggest that we should start by asking what are firms and why they have been so successful so far. And in order to do that, we have to go back to year 1932. I've been told that year 1932, and especially the summer of 32, was a very beautiful summer, and especially in UK. People spent hours and hours in parks. And also there was a young guy, he was 22 years old, who took long walks in parks. But this young guy only had one thing in his mind, and it was the question, why do we have firms? So why doesn't everything take place and or happen as Adam Smith has suggested, through markets? So why, if we are believers in markets and market capitalism, why do we create these socialist states called corporations with centralized planning and hierarchies? Now, the name of this guy was Ronald Coase, and later he got the Nobel Prize of Economics for his findings. And basically what Ronald Coase claimed was that prices don't explain what's going on in the markets, but in addition, there are costs involved. And you could say that the costs involved are about communication cost, coordination cost, and contracting costs. Now, his basic claim was that there's friction in the markets, and firms are okay as long as they do things with less friction than is the level outside in the markets. And why firms can do this? There was a big innovation called management. So management was there to take out this friction. So if you are managers in this room, you were the big innovation. That's good news. But the bad news is that it was a fairly old innovation. So the real question today is that because of the changes outside, can it be that the goal of Ronald Coase, which was to grow companies as big as the internal friction equals the outside friction, has the whole equation turned around? So is it today so that we are actually living in a superfluid world where companies actually have more friction inside than could be the things that, for example, 15-year-old girls do today? I'm a believer in the future world is in the way your young kids work today in their rooms. So the world is totally different today than it was at the time when our management systems and the way we see corporations were born. But some things still remain. And I would like to claim that work has always been and work is always going to be solving other people's problems. That's not going to change. Although the tools and technologies change, although the problems change and the solutions change. Actually, Henry Ford tells us in his memoirs that he had a problem that he wanted to solve. And the problem he defined was how farmers could get their goods out to markets to be sold. Now, his solution to this problem that he defined was so brilliant that there was a time when half of all the cars in the world were T-model Fords. So you could also claim that in times of transition, it's not unheard of that there are big players, monopoly players like Facebooks and Googles. That has happened before, and that's going to happen again. But the question is that is actually the time we live today, is it also different in the sense that are we approaching the end of the mass production era? And why I claim this is that we already see through research that contextual problem definitions create more value than mass solutions. And also we can say that there are many problems without a mass solution. So it seems that also the high liquidity world we live in allows us to think differently. We don't need to think about customers as segments. We can think about the context and the problem definitions that those contexts allow us to make. Now, that has, in a way, asked us and many others is that could we actually redefine, could we reimagine, could we replan what corporations are? Could we talk about and imagine totally new economic spaces that might be the basis also for the human-centric renaissance that we are so much targeting at? Now, funny enough, I claim that it is a technology thing. And the way we can do things is to understand that firms are much more about contracts than they are about assets. So firms are much more about contracts than they are about workers and managers. And the way we can make much more complicated and richer contracts is the way to create new economic spaces. And of course, we have new technologies like post-blockchain smart contracts that allow us to also create immensely rich ideas and create future earnings potential in a way that can be democratically shared with all the people involved. There's going to be totally new approaches during this year, so please pay attention to what's going on. We don't know yet where we'll end. And of course, the legal problems are quite severe also. So as the previous speaker was telling, that the technology is always moving faster than culture and the legal system. And that may be the thing that is going to be one of the obstacles when it comes to the future of work. But really, it is not only about thinking differently when it comes to contracts, but also thinking differently when it comes to understanding that products are not the only way to package value. We don't need to package value in services and products. The most important thing is to create customers. And how that can be done requires us to be much more open than we ever have done so far. Because that changes also the logistics of work. We used to work from a make and sell model. We first had an idea, then we made the product, and then we sold the product. But that seems to be turning around. So it starts from the customer context, and then works back to technology, technological solutions, and other solutions, and the network. And what also seems to be quite often evident is that if you are my customer and I don't have a solution for you, somebody in my network has a solution. So many of these producers actually see themselves as nodes in the networks that they create. And the larger the network, the more solutions there potentially are for the customers of this company. So network effects seems to be much more interesting again than assets of the corporation. The thing is that the way we see work is, again, not only about networks, but it's also seeing work as a social act. And then we need to go back to the relations of work. And basically, we have two kinds of relations today. We have the employer-employee relations, and we have the manager and worker relations. Now, both are intrinsically asymmetric. Both are based on the idea that there's somebody who knows more or somebody who decides. And of course, most of the managers are there to decide, and most of the workers are there to agree with the manager. Now, if the primary reason is to serve customers, that creates actually a different relationship or requirement for relationship. That requires us to think that relations should be symmetrical. It's a kind of a democratic approach to seeing where we are on the same level, where actually the worker very often knows more about the customer situation than the manager. Now, whether the worker is free to actually decide, whether the worker is free to serve the customer is a different thing. But it seems that the relationship ideas we have with companies seem to be fairly outdated. And therefore, actually, we think that we should take what's happening between people and between organizations as the unit of analysis. So it's not things that are done separately, it's not separate individuals, but it's individuals working together. And that's why our definition of work is that work is interaction between interdependent people. Work is interaction between interdependent people. And of course, that interdependence then changes from context to context. And that creates us totally new challenges when it comes to trust and the systems of trust. Can I trust this person? Can I work with this person? And systems of fast moving into productive teams. What comes to algorithms, what comes to robots, what comes to robotics, automation, I would say that human beings have always made tools and used tools. And much to the previous speaker, I would say that we are more productive, we are more efficient because we have more productive, more efficient tools. But I would also continue and say that we are more intelligent because we have more intelligent tools. So it's very hard to say where the human cognition ends and the help that we need so desperately is there. So whether it's inside you or whether you have access to tools, I absolutely agree with the previous speaker that we need this cognitive help. What's happening today is quite remarkable, because as the Industrial Revolution democratized consumption, what was earlier expensive now became possible for all. What was earlier only for the rich was now for the common man. For example, as a result from the mechanization of cotton manufacturing, the price of cotton in UK went down 90% in a few years. Now think about something that is of vital importance to you, something that is important and expensive, and if the price goes down 90%. It has huge second order or ramifications. So as the Industrial Revolution democratized consumption, I claim that the revolution we are in the midst of actually democratizes production. And why is that? Because the machines of work, the tools of work, more or less look like this. Now, if we take the production capacity of this thing, if we take the computing power of this thing, the price now is a few hundred euros. 10 years ago, the same production capacity, the price was 1 million euros. 20 years ago, this same thing, the price was 10 million euros. And now the question is that how much have our ways of doing things changed during the past 10 years or even 20 years? And I would like to claim that there's a huge learning depth at the moment. And the companies who are able to, in a way, raise up to the occasion and learn fast what's going on today are going to be the winners of tomorrow. The problem, of course, is that technology augments cognition, but not compassion. And that creates a kind of a new relationship between us and technology. Because I want to claim that what comes to tomorrow and the skills we need tomorrow, that empathy is the most important skill at work. That's the number one skill. And the number one way of doing things is to do things in interaction. So interaction is the most important work process. And that, again, changes much of the ways we try to understand what goes on in organizations. So far, we have thought that competence is something that is inside or between people's ears, inside person's head. Now, the way we see it, ability to do things is actually a result of the quality of interaction, not the schooling or training of individuals. So much of the work today should be seen as, in a way, distributed socially and distributed technologically. If people can do independently what they are doing, that's a problem today. Because what we do should be understood work as learning and learning as work. And also, if you think about, again, the topic, whether algorithms can create digital happiness, something that more and more people tell us what they see is most important things in work is that they see that they want to do meaningful things with meaningful people in meaningful ways. So we would like to claim that actually what technology can help us do is to connect people with the context and other people, that normal people, not the nerds, not the highly educated ones, but normal people can utilize technology and the coordination powers of technology to do more meaningful work. So in the future work, we claim that the basic human right is to do meaningful things. Something that we haven't learned yet, and something that we claim is going to be absolutely imperative, is to understand that economics is about morals. All economic decisions are moral decisions. So the big question ahead of us is the question, what is the world we are building, and what is good? What kind of a society we want to create? And I claim that that's a business decision more than a political decision. The famous quote from Charles Dickens goes like this: "It's the best of times and the worst of times." And for many of us in this room, it truly is the best of times. But for too many people outside this room, it is the worst of times. And this requires us to think very differently about issues like about inclusion and understanding that democracy is really the grounding for the future of work. First technology and then democracy, those two things should be together. So for each and every one of us in this room, I think the basic question is that what kind of problems we want to solve. And do we understand that businesses are there to solve social problems as much as anybody else? So what kind of problems we solve and what kind of questions we ask. If we do this, it's going to be the dawn of the digital happiness. Thank you very much.
By the way, if there's any question from you, here, someone. So I will ask you some questions, but we still have to look at the audience, because if they have a question, you need to throw the...
You throw it.
Okay. So a lot of questions. Where do we start? Management? Shall we start with management?
Why not?
Okay. So what's the future of management?
You want to be a professor? You can join the academia, so it's easier there than being a manager. So.
Do you think the manager should go for to academia?
Yes, Lucian.
Won't that be a disaster? No, I mean, serious. What can those people do?
Well, I think we are going to need managers who help people to understand things and make sense of the world around them. And we need managers who help people to connect and who help people to open the businesses and invite customers and need people inside the discussion. So I think change management is going to be one of the big roles of management in the future. But we don't need the managers who control, coordinate, communicate, and decide things. Decisions need to be made much more democratically than we ever thought. But I'm not saying that everybody can do whatever they like. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there needs to be even more kind of concern of what our purposes are, what our goals are, what our values are.
Yeah, I understand. It's by just my imagination of this, Sander talked about this company that has robots as manager. Do you think that a robot can become a good manager?
Well, it's not management, but an algorithm can help me to find the people that I should talk with who have seen the things that I'm going to see with this new customer, for example. So all work should start with 3 questions. What is there that I could build on? And who else knows about these things? Who could help me in a tight spot? And a manager only knows typically the subordinates that he has. So an algorithm could open the field for much wider potential than a manager can do. So algorithms that in that sense are more efficient as means of coordination.
And will they educate the managers? Are they their assistants, or do they replace them? Or
No. So it is and it has to be about people. But we need the cognitive help. We need all the cognitive help we can get, because our decisions, as was so well said, are always biased. We are very bad in making decisions. And just understanding the rationale from a more points of view is absolutely imperative. It's more about opening opportunities, and therefore, actually, we need the opposing points from people who think differently from us. So it's understanding that we should invite different opinions that are different but equal from our own.
the other question that I have is, why do we work? So in the first place, you say we are solving other people's problems.
Yeah.
So why don't we? I mean, why don't we solve our own problems? But I mean, is there is it a necessity? Can we imagine a world without work? And where's the meaning?
Well, I think it's always good if we have a process in society where we increasingly solve problems that we did not solve before. So I would say that instead of gross domestic product, we should understand what is the amount of problems that we have solutions to and how those solutions are spread in society. So the wealth of society is the result from the amount of problems we solve for humanity and for our people. So I think work is a good thing, and it's always something that is going to be part of humanity. So the idea is that we don't work is not part of human beings, from my point of view. Somebody may disagree, of course.
Well, I just came back from a holiday, and I thought I liked my holiday more than the work, so I hoped that it would be a different answer, but anyhow. So my last question is, so there's some news today, a new ICO has been launched. Sander talked about ICO, so you invest in a new company by buying the new Bitcoin coin, and you start up a new business. It raised more than $150 million. So if this advances, let's imagine. So what do you think is the ultimate impact of this, the blockchain, post-blockchain society?
Well, initial coin offerings are one way of crowdsourcing, crowdfunding. So there's nothing special in there, but there's a huge bubble going on at the moment. So don't invest.
Is this an investment advice?
Don't invest at the moment. So it's going to come down, but the principles are absolutely vitally important. So it's an important technology, and it's going to be a vitally important part of everybody's life in 10 years.
Ending with this investment advice for all of you, I would say let's be back in half an hour, enjoy the break, and see you for the last part. Thank you, Esko.